Good morning, beautiful people of the internet, and welcome once more for Sunday Special. Joined as always by Piotr Ruznik, Adam Lawrence, Helen Chorley, and myself, Jay Howard. We're going to jump straight in it today because we tend not to faff about too much, and we're just going to have a quick run through of Adam's Sunday supplement. Adam, what was today all about?
We don't faff about until we start faffing about. Anyway, I noticed you're nearly a full octave lower. I'd say, Jay. It must have been an excellent weekend, or it's just winter bugs.
No, this is full blown. Someone stabbed Jay in the middle of a room with property people to talk absolute bollocks for more than 12 hours. So this is. I'm not even recovering yet. It was phenomenal. So what's happens when you turn up to a Partners in Property party, right?
I'd say that's second weekend in a row.
Yeah, I know.
There's no doubt you'd have stepped up to the plate with full qualification, my friend. I know that you did. I know that you did.
You weren't there, so I had to make sure everything was represented correctly. I couldn't let you down.
84% of conversation walking out the door. It's not easy to not easy to replace. I understand that.
I got stitched up by Richie Clapson just to kind of throw this in here. It was maybe about half 2 in the morning, and some woman who was clearly beyond the realms of reckoning in terms of she was absolutely slaughtered. She may have been a slight bit of a mess as well, things hanging out all over the place, whatever. She seemed to have taken a shine to Mr. Clapson. So Clapson was.
He must have been a long way gone. A long way gone.
A long way gone. Like a long way gone. And she kept saying how she was married, but her husband will never find out. Anyway, Richie obviously got bored of the conversation and said, I'm going to introduce you to the celebrity in the room. The guy's been on Homes on the Hammer, he's on TV. Brings her over to me. He just foists this woman who's completely over the hill, like pissed off of her tits. I don't know if that's appropriate language, but just absolutely smashed. And then she wouldn't leave me alone. And then Angie had to send Jess over to rescue me, and Jess had to pretend to be my wife. How many times have I told you not to speaking to other women? I'm so sorry, love. I'm so sorry. She was like, oh, I didn't realize your wife was here. She trundled off.
Wow, what a grenade. What a grenade. What a save.
Going back over to Richie. Like she just couldn't get enough of Richie. That's what happens.
The man,
too charismatic.
He's a poor man's Glenn Armstrong at the best of times. What was she thinking? Compared to the chiseled good looks of Jay Howard, you're having a laugh, mate. You're having a laugh. Come on.
Oh.
Well done, Jess.
What a way to start the call. Yeah.
can't really put the supplements really boring compared to that. So we're really going to want to.
Jess has dropped in.
Morning, Jess. Well done. Well played. Thank you. Jay,
no one's correcting
you.
The story, which means I wasn't drunk enough to make it up. So
thank you for your service, Jess. Thank you for your service.
What did you say that we don't cough about?
Yeah, there's a real compliment in the fact that woman believed that Jess was my wife. I'd be punching beyond belief. You know what I mean? So it was a real bit of a confidence booster, that situation. I think somewhere
you slide in the backhanded compliment like no one I know, my friend. Absolutely, like a ninja, like a ninja of chat, ninja. So onto the more boring business. Onto the more boring business of the call. I think we'll just leave it there, to be honest. That's brilliant. I think it's 5 minutes of utter gold. So I've chosen this week. So I was struck really by the fact that this week was one of the far lesser old normal kind of weeks where nothing monumental happens. You'd be forgiven over the last sort of 3 months or so, certainly, for thinking that economics was fast-paced, sexy, God knows what else, whereas in reality, it's really not. And this week was a bit of a reminder of all of that, generally speaking, because we didn't have too much monumental go on. The usual, markets keep trading, they move up, they move down. We had some figures released around manufacturing, and it's looking the US yield curve's looking pretty miserable for a recession in sort of 6 to 12 months' time. The wolf's kind of not at the door, but he's indicating that he's hungry, at least, let's say. And the UK has been relatively placid. Although a retailer was in administration, there's been a deal struck to bring most of their units and shops and most of the business out of admin into Next, who are gobbling up retailers left, right, and centre. So one of these, I remember this being discussed when Carillion went. Is this the trigger? Is this one of the many things that's going to lead to big amount of unemployment? And generally speaking, when the labour market's tight, it can take these things on the chin anyway, and it's staying reasonably tight as it is. So I used the treacle analogy today. Nothing to do with Richie. The treacle analogy, because there's kind of all this clickbait out there at the moment, and I love YouTube. I think it's the greatest educational resource that's ever existed. But because of my penchant for watching property and economics videos, I do go on and see all of the clickbaity titles around how to survive 2023 and blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And it's like, the reality is it's going to be one day at a time, and it'll probably be relatively boring. And that this move in the market could be relatively slow and downwards / sideways in different fits and starts. And it's important to remember, although we've seen sort of at least 2.5% come off the top of the pricing, and I'm talking in nominal terms there thus far. And if you think when you've got inflation roaring along at about 1% a month, 2.5% in 2 months is really 4.5+% in 2 months. That's quite an adjustment really in real terms. In reality, it's going to be slow, it's going to be boring, it's going to be not dissimilar to what's happened in a lot of the stock markets, particularly the US stock market this year, where it's kind of gone down in a relatively orderly fashion, and everybody for their headlines and their blogs and everything else wants crashes and spectacular things that are something to write about, whereas really it could be a bit of a slide and a bit of a swim through treacle. Could be quite slow, could be quite boring. I really quite like these elongated, trappy, difficult markets, and I think most people who have been around for some time will probably be the same, because the skills kind of are much, much more important, and the ways of understanding things and doing deals are much more important. We've had a bit of pushback, as we always do, on a few offers we've put in this week, but I've never been so sure that we're doing the right thing for our business by sort of sticking to our guns. And I'm not hearing any methodological, reasonable pushback from any of the vendors. They just want more money because they want me to take all the risk on what's going to happen over the next 12 to 24 months. Well, that's obviously no deal. And we've got this interesting situation where the bond yields have moved so rapidly because they've been moving real time. That's what the price setting has been based on. We also had a genuine shock to that market, the likes of which we haven't seen for many, many years, back when Liz the Lettuce was around. And we might well have seen the peak in those. We could now be looking into a really interesting, if you look, well, really interesting in my world, right? But really interesting if you look at the headlines for the last 4 or 5 weeks around interest rates. You've moved from 4.75 being bandied around as the number to 4.5 to, I'm talking about peak base next year, sorry, to be clear, to 4.25. And now there's a few economists saying more like 4. I said a couple of weeks ago, I'm looking at 3.75 to 4 maybe as the peak, but I'm also looking around not much lower than that as the average for next year, because we're still going 3.5 next month. In a couple of weeks' time, in my opinion, we're going to go up another 0.5%. I think most of the world is on board with that. I wouldn't be incredibly surprised to see 0.25, though. I think that's probably a live runner, whereas the market have maybe not holding that in as much sway as they could be, but I think it'll be close, but probably 0.5. And then the logic was going to be 0.5 in Feb, 0.25 in March, and then sort of stop when they want to. I wouldn't be stunned again if they do the 0.5 in December to see 0.25 in Feb, and then we'll sort of play it by ear a little bit. At some point, there's going to be a surprise to the downside. No one's really talking about the pound against the dollar. The pound's back to 123 against the dollar, which is heady heights when you think about about 6 weeks ago, and we saw 103.5 touched overnight in Hong Kong, and we saw quite a lot traded at 107 and 108. Big difference, and that's due to US market weakness, indicating that the Fed can put their interest rates down sooner, and therefore people aren't as bullish on the dollar as they were being. So I don't think it's time to be bullish on the pound, because the one thing the Bank of England have been super consistent about is the fact they're going to not put rates up as much as the market thinks they are, and because they know we're into that zone now where it can do some damage to the economy. And it's worth reminding everyone that central banking policy tends to take at least 6 months to kick in, and then that kind of lasts for maybe a cycle of up to about 2 years before everything adjusts. So this 3% that was November, we're not going to see that until April or May. The only good thing about April is that hopefully the heating can go off, but remember the price cap's going up again, so we've got another 20% in the electricity prices. The electricity prices have been playing up again this week in Europe. There's been some incredibly high numbers traded in Norway for electricity. We're closer to a genuine energy shortage, certainly in parts of Western Europe, which we wouldn't be prepared for, and our lifestyles are not prepared for. And this is where you get those parallels with the winter of discontent. The strike action is setting in. It's going to carry on, because next year we're still going to be looking until at least April, May time, and that lift in the cap means we've got some guaranteed further inflation path through costs in April next year, from the 1st of April. So it's going to keep inflation in double digits until around then. And when we get to, when are the 2 months when people do their pay rises, generally speaking? January and April, right? So in a backdrop of a double-digit inflation world, people aren't going to be getting double-digit pay rises, because companies can't afford to give them, governments can't afford to give them, and they are desperate to avoid that wage price spiral that we've been talking about. But there's a couple of other bits rather than just the macro this week that I touched upon. John Lewis, anybody who'd done a bit of fag packet numbers, John Lewis building 1,000 units in London for 500 million. So they reckon they're willing to spend 500k a unit on the build. They sound like fairly impressive, but I don't suppose they've got any buy-to-let landlords quaking in their boots around the sort of quality of accommodation or competition that they'll be offering. It's just more of the same sort of stuff. And 1,000 over goodness how many years it'll take them to deliver them is quite literally a drop in the bucket, isn't it, realistically? Blackstone, who run one of the world's biggest real estate investment trusts, paused redemptions and only managed to redeem about half of the requests they had. Probably, I don't really think it's massive news, this stuff. If you want a property fund, you really shouldn't expect to be able to redeem the money on the day, because it's an illiquid asset, realistically. So you've got to be realistic and look at these things in 3 to 6 month tranches. As usual, it's probably quite a bad time to redeem, because REITs had their worst quarter, I think, ever, from some of the stuff that I read in Q3 2022. So the horse has kind of left the gate already. And if people are selling stuff off on the basis of yield expansion, actually the current direction of travel is suggesting that yield expansion isn't going to happen as badly as everyone thought. So, i.e., rates aren't going to go up as much as thought. Now, that kind of conflicts slightly with my opinion around the inflation situation, but the way that I reconcile it in my head is we're talking about duration of high rates here, and that's where I touched on over the last week or two. The Office for Budget Responsibility has forecast inflation down to 0 in 2024. I just see that as a near mathematical impossibility. But even if it was going to happen, the only reality would be that the base rate would come down in order to try and put some juice back in the economy, because the danger is it's going to grind to a halt. And we've got an almost twofold problem with growth over the next 3 to 5 years. One is that interest rate being up because of inflation, and the other one is cheap energy is kind of important to economies. I mean, the US economy only is one of the big reasons why it's one of the beasts that it is that ultimately gas, as they call it, or petrol or diesel, as we prefer to call it, is so cheap and is generally subsidized. So until we can find a clean, cheap energy solution, which is years and years away, even if we implement the ones that we've got, which a lot of economists think are not particularly good value, bang for buck wise. They just do something for the sake of doing it. We could get into a risky climate change conversation here, which could wake a few people up on a Sunday morning. Then these things are solved in cycles of 5 to 10 years, not solved in 12-month cycles, especially as compared to Germany. Although Germany had built this silly, huge dependency on Russia, at least they've got their finger out, got their backsides into gear and started doing something about it. I'm not really aware of what the hell we're doing about it at the moment. Now, we weren't dependent on Russia, but that's not the point, because Russia is setting the price for the rest of the world, or influencing the price for the rest of the world at the moment. And they can continue to do that because they've got so much gas and so much oil. And that's a bit of a puzzle that will drag on economic growth for a long time, because when you've got a pretty limp economy that can only grow at 1.5–2% a year, if you put the price of energy up, all of that is going to be inefficiently taken away. Now, we're using that cycle of windfall tax. We're now there in that cycle. We've admitted that's what we've got to do. Windfall tax to bring it back to cap energy prices for households and businesses. But government intervention in a market like that is inefficient. It stops the market from clearing properly. It gives the wrong incentives out. And it certainly, why did we privatise so much stuff in the first place? Maybe not a popular viewpoint, but the reality of it, the market is better at allocating resources than the state. That's the reality of it. And that's been proven so many times. I don't think we really need to go into a debate about that. So that's kind of the cliff notes of where we're at, how boring but challenging, but also potentially lucrative it might be to be trading through next year. I did put a shout out to the traders in there, guys. So I think you've probably had tough conditions to trade through over the last couple of years, and now you should have something that I think looks a bit easier, hopefully. So I know you guys have been doing okay anyway. So maybe just prepare the Bentleys and the rollers or whatever else is going to come when the riches start raining from the heavens. Ha ha.
Interesting. I think
gobsmacker ending to that one, isn't it? What was you going to say, Piotr?
Yeah, I was like one of the things the moment you said it, like the 500 million spent on 1,000 homes, like being 500k a home, a flat, whatever that is. Probably it's going to be flats, right? Because it's London, and it's going to be above shops or whatever. So like, how come someone is spending so much money on each flat? I mean, it's a huge cost, right? And if that investor also had to buy all the land that's necessary for building it, that's probably then adding to like another 500k flat. So that would be 1 billion for 1,000 flats. How is that possible? Is it being run by one of the famous investors who lost a lot of investors' money? One famous developer. Is it run by the JV developer partner?
Didn't he say this was John Lewis that was doing the build out?
I know it was, yeah.
Strange. I mean, not strange. All of these big corporates are trying to get into that space, so it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, unless it's all calculated with the 500 million in total with the value of the land or something like that, because that would sound more plausible. That would sound a bit more kind of realistic.
More plausible. So if it's London, new build, probably decent spec, decent size, flat, 500,000 doesn't sound too far off the mark in value. It doesn't sound like it should be that for build out though. That sounds like a lot of money.
Are these flats in central London, in like Oxford Street or somewhere? What's that?
No, we're just putting them on top of Buckingham Palace, PR. It's just going to be a Buckingham skyscraper.
You're laughing, but there's House of Frasers or something like that. That one went bankrupt, and I think there's some flats being built on top of that building, or that building being converted into flats, right? And there's going to be a lot of flats there, and there are some John Lewis's in central London.
Yeah, so maybe they are converting all of their storage space, taking everything off site. That would be interesting.
Possibly. Um, we've got a pre-active chat today. Keep posting questions, guys. Thoughtful Sunny has posted. I'm from Ealing, where journalists are trying to do this, and pushback from locals has been pretty monumental.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's one of those areas, Ealing, where people do get their knickers in a twist.
Journalists are just lucky they don't have to buy the land here, as it would easily double, triple the 500k cost, as Piotr said.
Yeah, that's been on the way up for quite a few years already, hasn't it? Ealing,
Yeah, and
Hanwell, all that area.
James got the article. Here you go, Piotr. This is the link. JLP announces first proposed location for rental homes. Nice one. Thanks, James. That's really useful.
It's James.
We'll do some research.
I wish
Interesting.
I found out a couple of months ago. I would have invested a little bit of money into John Lewis if they're starting to do stuff like that.
Can you do that? I think that's a partnership, right? That's like
It is a partnership. You can't buy into a partnership.
Unless you employ yourself in John Lewis.
Should I do 6 hours a month at John Lewis just to kind of
Get a little Saturday job, Jay.
Little Saturday job takes me back.
Put in a request into like the company management, and you should consider that.
Yeah.
Oh, James is saying Reading as well. Interesting.
Oh, Reading.
Ealing and Reading are first up.
Okay, so not as central in London as we were joking about, but Ealing's.
Plus, when you start at 500k a flat, who knows who's going to deliver it on time and under budget?
Yeah, Hardy was saying, assuming average flat size of 750 square feet for a 2-bed, 500k would be a build rate of £660 per square foot. Sinks extortion, even factoring communal areas, something not right with the figures.
I mean, the 500 must be what they think the expected value is going to be per flat, because that is an extortionate spend, right? They must think, oh, these flats at the end are going to be worth £500,000, which probably for Ealing is not far off the mark, for probably new build or John Lewis building from memory there is actually quite a nice, attractive building. So.
Yeah, but I guess if you're John Lewis, who do you go to? You only go to the biggest boys in the game who are going to charge you the big boy rates for doing all of it, and are saying to them, probably don't expect to make any money on these. You'll be able to deliver them at 500k, and they'll be worth 500k, guys. So they've got there'll be 40,000 people in the food chain taking a bite out of it, won't there? Probably, because they're not builders, are they? Not developers.
If they're getting Candy to build out like One Hyde Park, I'd get it. But Reading and Ealing, do you know what I mean? It does sound extortionate. It does.
Interesting. There's also a question from Mohsin. What are your thoughts on Homes REIT and in the FT this week? We're on change the heart to non-profit homeless housing strategy. I wanted your views. Not sure exactly what Homes REIT in the FT means.
So you mean a real estate investment trust?
Yeah, I guess this refers to some article.
And there's a story in the Financial Times this week. I haven't seen the story, Martin.
I haven't actually.
I haven't heard of Homes REIT, I must say.
Yeah,
it looks like there's a REIT called Home REIT that invests in sheltered housing. That was founded in 2020. There you go. So I'm guessing perhaps they're raising more money this week, and that's why it's hit the headlines. Not sure. I didn't see it myself. Raised 240 million in October 2020 to invest in 500 properties for homeless people. So they go about half. Similar raise for what John Lewis is talking about, right? Same sort of money.
Yeah. Okay. Well, interesting. There's gonna be we just need some more questions, more clarity on what you're asking exactly, Mohsin.
On the
Hey.
general principle of having that kind of property business, I guess I'm a fan of this social impact investment, to help either people who are homeless, or people who are disabled, or people who are vulnerable, or whatever it may be, caring for that part of society, providing quality housing for them, I think is a genuine route to go down if you are if you're an investor that has a genuine purpose and heart for the for providing that. There's been some news out recently from housing associations and the failures that they've had in terms of maintaining the quality of their stock, and the little boy obviously lost his life because there were issues with mold, and we discussed that a number of weeks ago. But yeah, I think the government and the local authorities, since they started selling off housing stock 30, 40 years ago, don't have the facilities available, the capital available, or the inclination readily available to do anything. So it will be left open for less of the PRS, but more of dedicated investors that are looking to build housing and opportunity for people to be looked after.
Isn't it? It's incredible to me that it's sort of passed pretty much without comment. Maybe it's just the skill of the government PR machine, but it's passed pretty much without comment that LHA is frozen for next year. So that probably tells you all that you need to know about the true intentions of this government towards the quality of housing for those most in need. So it's hard as a social impact investor to look at 20 and 30 and 40-year leases if anything is remotely based on LHA. And what you're going to see is the market's going to move away from LHA because it's going to have to, which is going to make a mockery of what the local housing allowance is supposed to be. But RPs that we've dealt with for years and years have come back, and these people who've always been anchored to LHA or would pay a percentage of LHA, maybe slightly under, maybe slightly more, and are just saying, look, we're looking more at market rents now because we understand you can't deliver units when, I think there was I've mentioned this before, but there was an article I was reading some weeks ago that was saying 1 bed LHA, which is probably the sector, if we're being brutal about it, and the government cares least about in many ways, because it's not the traditional what's painted in the press as the single mum with the kids. It's the potentially, it's only reserved for the over 35s anyway, isn't it? It's the over 35s, predominantly male, possibly battled against some kind of addiction, and or divorced as a rule. And that only covers, and this is at 2022 prices, so forget next year, only covers something like 3% of the 1 bed accommodation available in Sunderland, 4% of what's available in Cornwall, and 5% in Norwich, or something. I can't remember the numbers are right, 3, 4, and 5. I can't remember the place to the number, match it up. So 1/20th, 1/25th, and 1/33th of that accommodation available is available to people on MHA without top up. So you've got fuel poverty as a serious problem in that sector, especially at the moment. You've got all these other factors going on. How on earth can and then we're going to freeze it. We're going to freeze it for another year, and we're going to freeze it probably till 2028 because that's when everything else is frozen until. And I just can't imagine what state the system will be in by then. But again, it's a creeping slow death thing. It's not a axe falling style thing. Whether that'll change at the next election, I don't know. But in reality, the worst part of that is, apart from anything else, is that economically it pushes more people into supported, which is a lot more, or temporary, which is a lot more expensive. So it doesn't even save any money. It's just political hogwash, I'm afraid.
Maxima did this. Another part of this group is ex-offenders with 79% reoffending rate within 12 months, mainly single male.
Well, this is the thing. We have especially with a long-established Conservative government, we have a pretty draconian attitude towards all of that compared to a Scandinavian style model where recidivism is so much lower. But ideologically, fixing that is a significant problem. And most of the crime in terms of economic loss that's going on in the country now, the majority of it is actually fraud, and mostly cyber fraud. Not that it isn't important for society to maintain a robust police force, but so much time is spent trying to dodge targets these days. I said on Friday the NHS 4-hour A&E target hasn't been hit since 2015, so it might as well not exist anymore. You know, they're not trying to hit it. There's no consequence of not hitting it apart from the service level is very poor, because what's needed to make that happen is not being done. It's a rather depressing chat for a Sunday morning, isn't it, really?
It started so well with a story from Jay.
It did. Let's talk about Richie again. He can raise a few giggles. Yeah. Let's talk about rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
What's everyone's plans for next week? What's on the roster? What's the opportunities to be grabbed and tackled and tamed?
Yeah, I'm working through a few difficult deals, trying to get something over the line, trying to get a few things accepted so we can get them into legals before Christmas. Working through all of that. Fencing with vendors, I guess I'd describe it as. Excuse me a moment.
Always gone off to fence with some vendors.
Yes, the opportunity arose. On guard, repulse.
I'd like to see that, actually.
What about you, Helen? You're still in the UK for a bit?
I'm still here, yeah, but heading back to Malta pretty soon. Now that we've had really bad floods and storms, there was gale 9 winds last weekend, so I'm hiding out in London for a change, avoiding the bad weather in Malta, which is usually the opposite way around. So
Well,
yeah,
luckily
just
you
wait
live
for
on
the
a
sun
hill,
to come out again. Sorry, Pip.
Luckily you live on a hill, so probably the flood didn't affect your house that much, right?
No. Yeah, no,
good.
it'll be all right. But yeah, lots of places got flooded. Places by the sea, yeah, got flooded. So yeah, whole country ground to a halt. But it's not like this. It's amazing. I think this about, in the UK, like leaves on the track. This happens every year, right? This is not unusual. Like, why does everything grind to a halt? It's like, we know this is going to happen. It's probably going to happen again in February as well. So should we do something about it, maybe? No.
No, that would be too easy, Helen. That'd be too easy.
I always think about a conversation I had with Richard Little when this happens in Malta, because what I didn't realize is there's different types of like tarmac and different permeabilities. He talked me all through it on one of his developments once. It was really interesting. And every time I see it in Malta, I think we must be using the wrong tarmac. Maybe I should speak to them about that. Not that I know anything about it, but we're doing something wrong.
Yeah, funny enough, I knew the tarmac thing, right? Because I knew the tarmac thing. Because the tarmac that they use in the UK is kind of like a fit for all. It doesn't do well in extreme heats. It will cover extreme cold fairly well. And slip and oil and stuff like that is really good for. But if you were to use the tarmac that they use in places like Dubai or Saudi Arabia, anywhere in the Middle East, anywhere where it's really hot, your tires would stick. Your tires would stick.
Wow.
If it gets too hot. And then like in really cold countries, like you see all these I don't know if anyone's seen it before, they're actually really funny, but all of these car accidents that happen in Russia, you seen those where people like drive and they try and stop and they just slide forever and like hit into the side of a bus, and obviously they're going at like a stupidly slow like speed, but they just can't stop. So the way people slow down and stop and park, it's just by bumping into another car and stopping. But obviously that's because they have the wrong tarmac. Yeah,
Wow.
it's problematic. They just have a generalized fit for all kind of thing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
Wow.
well, whatever Malta has can't cope with the amount of rain, deluge of rain that we get a few times a year.
That's because it's the tarmac that's required to manage excessive heat, right? To
Right,
stop your
probably.
tires from melting onto it. So it
Yeah.
has a different permeability and structure to kind of absorb heat, but it doesn't absorb water.
Wow. Jay, you like setting yourself up for another part-time job as an engineer of tarmac
Yeah,
roads across the world.
between that and John Lewis, my schedule's full.
Oh, nice one.
And what about you
Um,
guys? What have you got planned next week?
there's
I'm
an
heading up
auction.
to. There's an auction, yeah. I'm heading
There's
up
an
to
auction.
Portugal, doing the
Jason,
last trip of the year. Yeah, yeah. And then
yes,
Piot's disappearing off to Thailand for a what is it, like a Muay Thai training
yes, Muay
retreat
Thai,
thing?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fitness camp for a month. And
Wow.
actually, I was surprised because one of our Auction Bars Club members become a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Open Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion of the Britain. And I posted I'm going there. He said he was there like a while ago in the exactly same camp in Portugal. And also Omar said that he was there in 2009. Apparently, it's like a big kind of well-known camp, which I kind of accidentally chosen. So interesting.
And here was me just thinking he was off to Thailand for a bit of a jolly over Christmas. He's actually off to do a proper thing.
Exactly, Jay. You'll see the results.
Yes, no, I believe. I was skeptical to start, but it's starting to sound like it's a genuine thing. So. I started off being really
Oh,
jealous. I was going to Thailand. He's going to, and then I saw this. I was like, well, he's going to have to do a lot of work.
yeah. It's that's the thing. I'm the kind of person I need to put myself in that kind of environment, and then just can't escape. That's the kind of I'm very much a product of people that I've got around me. So I need to surround myself with some MMA fighters and some other guys that are kind of into the exercise and fitness is their life. So hopefully will rub off on me a little bit. And when I come to Portugal, I'll continue doing that. That's the main reason I'm going there for a month, because it's all about kind of putting myself in this environment, building habits, and then coming back. When I'm back, it's like I continue those things because it becomes like normal. I remember when I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat in 2010. I came back and basically I became vegetarian for like 5 years. Then I started eating fish after 5 years, and now I'm back to eating meat. So there's those habits don't last forever, but at the same time, like I changed what I think about certain things, and but I like putting myself in the kind of environment.
I think I could be right up for 10 days of silence, turn my phone off, have nothing to do with the whole world or anything. Oh God, that sounds absolutely heavenly. Might go slightly or even more bonkers, but yeah, I could be quite up for that.
Yeah, it's definitely good because like if you think about it, there's never probably been a period of your life when you've been quiet even for 3 days in a row, and that kind of lack of stimulation um really gets
I did do
can get
one.
overwhelming. But
I did do one actually once in Thailand. That was just 3 days. And yeah, you couldn't speak apart from at meal times. But actually, I was the only person at this place, right? And it's just outside of Bangkok, actually. I was the only person there, so there wasn't actually anybody else to speak to. So I just used to go and feed the fish in this little stream every day. And I remember it being like, honestly, one of the worst experiences of my life. I hadn't really got properly into meditation. I was trying to. So so I was like a mindfulness exercise. They're like, oh, like we sweep this road. I mean, a road, not a paved road. like a road. We sweep this, and you have to be mindful as you're doing it. And I'm not being funny. Like I don't even do my own washing up. And I'm like, you're joking. So, but I'm like, okay, it's going to be exercise. And I think you're supposed to be mindful and, thinking how much good you're doing, sweeping this with a wooden, not a brush, like a stick broom. And it's a big, long road. And I think you're supposed to be mindful, thinking, I'm just concentrating on observing your thoughts. And all I could think the whole time was, this shit for 3 hours. I just thought, this shit. It was the most unrelaxing thing I've ever done in my life.
The best part of that is you started censoring yourself, but you still said shit. It was kind of like, I won't swear, this shit. Like 4 times. I was like, why didn't you just say fuck?
Well, I'm mindful that we're on LinkedIn. I was trying to be a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, shit is allowed on LinkedIn, that's right, but you can't say fuck. Fuck is fucking bad, for fuck's sake. Yeah, gotta stay away from fuck.
Oh God,
Oh,
it's
funny.
just... I couldn't wait to leave that place.
I haven't done a silent retreat, but I've spent time in two, like one is a Buddhist temple, and one was like a kind of like like an old shinobi or can't use the word. It was in Japan. There you go. One was in Tibet, one was in Japan. It will come back to me. It wasn't really silence, but the one in Japan was absolutely fucking brutal. Absolutely brutal. They did this. It wasn't like a training thing, or it was like a meditation, but it was all about silencing the mind rather than being silent.
Right.
So there was like waterfall training, which is, I mean, if you've got a bad back or a bad neck, like tight muscles, stand under a waterfall for 30 seconds and that'll be loosened right up. Anything more than 30 seconds and it starts to beat your bones into smush. So you have to kind of and it's freezing, like it's in northern kind of Japan, bloody freezing. So you'd have to do that, and then you'd have to do other things and reaction training. And if you weren't fast enough, you'd get slapped with something.
I think
Sounds like
Helen's
boot camp.
Helen's expression means she would rather sweep the road.
Sweep the road, yeah. I didn't really know what I was signing up for because I didn't and still don't really speak Japanese. So yeah, but there was meditation in it, and I was trying to be, I was trying to be reflective of myself and who I thought I was or wanted to be and all that crap. But yeah, I then didn't do anything more like that for about 4 or 5 years after that. It kind of traumatized me.
Totally.
I don't want to meditate under a waterfall.
Wow.
I think doing those kind of things is like super extremely beneficial for business, and also like because you focus on the things that like are pure fundamental kind of core things, right? And then you come back and then like you can act better in business, act better in life because like you spend time like focusing on those fundamental things. And I also know some investors who, for example, like they would only invest in people who've done some extreme things because they want to know that someone's gone through some like same things and they kind of gonna think possibly the similar way. Like I know some investors would only invest people if they done ayahuasca or something, and if they haven't, they're like, we don't trust them.
Clearly, your mind is open enough to do business with us. Yeah,
that's exactly how some people think, and yeah. So it's
a very good filter, to be fair. I wish I'd done that on a couple of my deals.
You're going to have to hand them out like a multiple choice version of the psychopath test, Helen.
Exactly.
Part of the loan agreement, they have to pass that test.
Exactly. Well, I know 2 that would fail.
It seems like we lost Adam again.
I'm trying to think of all the extreme things that I've done. Probably one of the most extreme things that I've done, which probably for most people isn't extreme. I was in Sweden, and it was cold. I understand it's cold a lot in Sweden, but we basically, you had to like run out of the house. I was in my birthday suit, which thank God no one was recording. Then you have to like jump. They've already created the hole. You've got to jump in a hole in this frozen lake. Then you come out, and then you get hit with nettles. And then you sit in a sauna, and the change from the freezing cold to the nettles to the heat. I actually felt like it would have been nicer if I just peeled my skin off. I would have felt more comfortable. It was horrendous.
Wow.
But there are
That is
people that do
hardcore.
that. There are people that do that, like that's 3 times a week for them. That's part of their like body kind of moisturizing technique, or I don't know what you'd call it, but there are people that I will never do that again. It was torture is probably the closest thing I could put to it. But I was so grateful to be like, when I got into the sauna, I was so grateful it was warm, because I couldn't feel anything below my ankles. Actually, I couldn't feel anything below my belly button. I got into the heat, and I was kind of like, oh, it's so warm. And then the stinging nettles were like, oh, it's warm. And then all the feeling came back, and it just kind of hits you all at once. And I was like, I want to die. There are probably some people watching this going, what a pussy. But don't do it, and then give me a call. Do it and give me a call.
No, that is actual torture.
Yeah.
One thing
What's
I was thinking
the
of
most
doing.
extreme thing? Have either one of you done a firewalk yet? I know that was popular for a while.
I did the firework. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you find that?
It was okay. It's nothing special. It's like, it felt there was a little build up, and then you do it in like 10 seconds and it's done. And yeah, it's there's a lot of build up to it. One of the things I was thinking of doing is going for like an Ayurvedic retreat with this, which isn't extreme, but the extreme thing is having like 2.5 hour massages every day. That's fairly extreme. Like,
I think we need to do this on the business. I think we need to go. I think for business, this could work out well.
After a week and a half, I just didn't know what to think about during those massages. Like, it's just too much. But anyway, when the part of that Vedic retreat was also, or was going to be, like the one I was going to go to, was being in like a pure darkness kind of cave for 24 or 48 hours, and they just like bring you food and like give you everything. It's just like a solitary thing, and there's like pure darkness, and everything is made so there's no reflection of any sort of light, and also there's no sound, because unless you talk to yourself, but that would be a bit extreme as well. So you spend the whole 24 or 48 hours, and it's like a massively, like it's basically like a withdrawal of all sorts of sensations that we're so used to.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's noise everywhere, right? I mean, and even like the noise you can't really hear. And then you got all of like the vibrations and signals like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and Telegram and all that kind of stuff. You stick yourself in a cave, you're going to get far less of all that background stuff as well. There's
a noise in our chat. Like when I try to convert this chat into podcast, there's so much noise. You can't believe it. and that's all. If you just withdraw the eyes, like if you stop seeing the video on our chat, so much noise. It's like all the little things that come and pop up. And like if you imagine you withdraw that, you withdraw other things, and like pure, like you're in a pure place in the middle of a forest, then there's a lot of deprivation. So that was what I was going to do. What extreme things you did, Helen?
You must
extreme
that you can talk about, yeah.
That you can talk about. don't know what that. Piotr's got a real opinion there of you, Helen. Like, yeah, she's done some extreme shit, but just only the stuff that's PG-13, Hells. Yeah, the stuff you can actually share. Can't talk about the time you murdered that guy, but talk about some other stuff.
I've got nothing as bad as being beaten with nettles. That's done some cool stuff on my dispenser retreats, but nothing that wild. I tell you, the person that's done the weirdest things is my mum. She's done wing walking. Do you know what wing walking is?
Wing walking.
On the plane.
Yeah, when you get strapped to the top of a plane and it takes off. She did that when she was 72, 74.
Wow.
That's quite extreme.
Wow.
Can you imagine the adrenaline from that?
And she did
She
something
loved it. As
last
soon
year
as it
for her
came back down,
birthday,
she's
right?
like, let's do it again. Bless her.
She
Is
did
that what she
something
did
for her
for her
birthday.
birthday? Yeah.
Yeah, what did she do for her birthday last year or this year? It was something.
Oh, we did
quite
the where you get pulled behind a boat. What's that called? Para sending.
Gliding, sailing.
No.
The one where you're up in a big thing and you get pulled along behind a boat with your little legs dangling in the air.
Like the parachute up here, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. That's pretty
That was
cool.
quite cool.
Nice.
I've done what's the one where you're strapped to somebody? That sounded so wrong.
He said what you can share, Helen. What you can share.
Carry on, Helen.
I was still on the air theme.
Yeah.
Wasn't paragliding the one.
Parachuting?
No, it wasn't a parachute. It's where you run and jump off a mountain.
Oh, what, free falling?
No. Then you like glide down.
Yeah. So what, paragliding?
Maybe. Is that what it's called?
I think
Yeah,
parasailing
well, anyway,
is
I've
the one
done
where
that.
you're on the water, and
I've
paragliding
done
is
that
the
in
one where
Nepal, and I've done it in running off a mountain in Switzerland.
Oh
That was
wow,
fun.
nice.
Interesting.
Strapped
Got
to
a couple
somebody
of comments.
with clothes on.
And it says like-minded people work with like-minded people, be it retreat, walk of fire, Tony Robbins, footballs, holidays, values. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, Mohsin Medal of Fuel of Lifelong Friends at Tony Robbins type events. Likewise. And a tip, if you fancy extreme tough, try Tough Guy, like Madrans on steroids.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
just
I've seen
no.
that. Yeah.
It's just all kinds of wrong. That.
That is that's a really
And we've
Here
got
he is.
Ranjit.
Morning, Ranjit.
Morning, Ranjit. Cool, brilliant. Well, I think maybe we have inspired a few people to do some extreme things or search for some extreme things. I don't know about you, but I find it like super, even just searching for this kind of stuff is like super mind opening, because you're thinking like we live in this kind of like there's a lot of regular things that we do and a lot of like things that keep us in same spot that we don't even realize. But when we start like looking on, even just like, I don't know, going on holidays somewhere unusual, or going with someone unusual, or like doing something out of ordinary, it just like opens mind to so many different things.
Yeah, step outside your comfort zone and try something new.
Maybe it's a step up outside of your comfort zone Sunday for many people today. Who knows? I think like, especially going through times like there's recessions and there's all sorts of other things, like I think doing this kind of things is really beneficial. If someone like even like especially in difficult times, because it opens mind to new possibilities, I believe.
I like the
things
stuff
don't have to
gives
be.
you there you go.
Yeah, I'm saying things don't have to be as extreme as like going somewhere to the other side of the world, but it could be even doing something local. Like I remember, like once in 2012, I started dancing 5 rhythms. I think I was down, like literally was outside of my flat. It was cost like £10 or £15 a session, but I was dancing for like 5 years. But every time I would go, like just it was just crazy, like how opening this is, how releasing of a lot of stuff this is. So there's a spectrum of things that can be done anytime, any place.
Oh, first time I went to that 5 Rhythms, they used to run one in Vauxhall. I don't know if they still do. Oh my God, I had the best sleep of my night of my life. Oh my God, it was just, oh, it was so cool. Loved that. Maybe I should start that in Malta.
I'm pretty sure it's there. That combined with your trampoline jumping.
Yes. Yes. That's what we do the next day to wake up. Yeah.
Cool, nice one. All right, guys. Well, it's 10 o'clock. Let's wrap up this chat, and maybe in a couple of weeks, people will tell us a lot of the kind of things that they did after hearing our crazy conversation.
I love. Can we just finish on Ed's comment?
Oh, joining Auction Buyers Club is dangerous. Yeah, Ed, it can result in doing multiple deals and being addicted to auctions.
You know what I think is really dangerous? The ones that come back.
Oh, yes. Addicts.
Mr. Edward.
Addicts.
Addicts. Addicted to the danger.
We should do Auction Buyers Club Anonymous.
Yeah.
Recovery
so
program.
I put this deal forward and Piotr told me it was shit. And
I know.
Don't waste your time, he says. Don't waste your time.
There'll be some real trauma from those calls, yeah.
Real trauma.
Including myself. I'm working in dangerous environment. I want to pay like.
Yeah.
Danger money.
That's it.
Amazing, really good. All right, guys. Well, I wish everyone an amazing Sunday, and we'll be back next week.
Have a great weekend,
we'll be
everyone.
back next week.
Yes.
Speak soon. Bye.
Bye. Good week.